Sorry about the beginning of this whole thing. I'll go through and edit that out later. Sweet. Alright. Alright, so what I was going to talk about before my audio was completely muted, I did not know I had my mic muted this entire time. We're going to talk Generation 2, Machine Wars, and all that. If you guys know, the Generation 2 Machine Wars that we did not get was the flip jets and the flip cars. These Generation 2 toys did not get an actual official release until Machine Wars. But the cool thing is, let's see here, we have official images of unknown ones that came out with some deco on them. One of the deco things on the back of one of these jets was a dragon. This dragon is kind of interesting. I thought it was really strange. This particular toy was not released for Generation 2, but this is the actual prototype painted version of one that would have been slotted for Generation 2. We don't actually have any names for any of these yet, but it's kind of strange seeing these actually get leaked out into the wild. This was known as your Skywarp and your Thundercracker out of Machine Wars. But the one thing that's really interesting is the fact that these have light piping. Light piping was a Generation 2 thing. It did not even carry into the Machine Wars, which is really strange. We didn't see any light piping stuff like these until Beast Wars 2, and then your Universe line, because Universe line actually had those as well. And a secondary one we have here is this jet here, which would have possibly had this was known as the Seeker mold for Megatron and Megaplex. The toy itself actually had kind of a bonish beige color for a camo deco, along with I have a little better closer up here of the YF22 sticker on the back of them. If you notice, like I said, light piping. This would have been a Generation 2 thing. Unfortunately, we don't have any names for any either one of these Seekers. I really wish we did, because it'd be kind of cool to get that. But unfortunately, that did not happen with these. But moving on, we actually have Generation 2 Lightspeed, which Lightspeed would have been their Mirage Prowl mold, but it would have had flame deco along with kind of a blackish charcoal color that would go across the very back of the car and probably carried over to this spoiler. I wish they would have took a photo of the spoiler part here, but they did not, because the only thing we actually have is this picture here, which is very, very vague. Whoever's got these, I really wish they would take high-res pictures of these things in every mold and every direction. Moving on, we actually have what would have been known as Generation 2 Grease Pit. Grease Pit is obviously a tow truck, but if you notice, he's actually got the gray hook, unlike the Machine Wars version that came out that has kind of a maroonish brown color. And then he actually has tampoing on the sides along with gold rims, which is completely different from everything else. As TJ's right here, it says 24-hour towing service on the side. It's pretty neat. And that's right here, having this 7694 here. Not really sure what the 76 stands for, but I'm pretty sure the 94 states when they would have actually been released, because they tend to do little tiny things like that throughout the Generation 2 line. Some of them had 93 on them, such just tampoed somewhere on the toy, which was really, really interesting. And then I'm going to take and show you a picture of, scroll through my thing here. If you guys want to know what I'm on my Generation 2 Transformers Facebook page, so if you guys want to follow it, you can. But here's a picture of the tow truck next to the unpainted prototype. One thing I do find that's really strange is the fact that this actually has a light bar that's translucent and this one here isn't. Could have been a change in the actual test shot, but I could see them probably just not even using a translucent light bar here, just using translucent windows, which would have been interesting. And you also notice the rims are not painted on this one here either. And another thing that they actually had was just a prototype test shot of one of the planes from the Cyberjets. These Cyberjets are actually pretty amazing toys. I really, guys, go out and buy them. They're just cool. It would have been interesting to see some come out in this kind of a color scheme. I really do like this blue, but I'm not really sure if that was actually going to be an actual test shot or if this was just them just running whatever color they needed through the mold. No real information on that one. And the same goes for this guy here. It looks like they just shot whatever color they had through a test shot, and this is what they came out with. These Cyberjets are toys that you can still acquire on eBay and such, and I have seen quite a few knockoffs. I've actually seen a knockoff of this colored red one before. It's kind of funny, but this is an official test shot, so not really sure what the story is with those yet. Another thing, shouldn't have killed my page. I killed my page. Oh no, I killed my page. It's okay, I'll go back to it. Oops, hold on. There we go. Media. Give me a minute here. Let's see here. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where did it go? Disappeared on me. Alright. Let's talk about crash tests. Crash tests here could have easily been thrown into this whole mix of the Toxitron line that they came out with the unreleased colors and molds. Easily, mainly because you had Combiner Wars Jazz. Combiner Wars Jazz would have been a perfect candidate for this, and I don't know why they did not do this, because they easily could have done this. They could have done Daytonas, considering they've been doing a lot of car robot stuff, and it would have been neat to see something go on with this particular toy. I really wish they would have done something with that, and the fact that they could have, I don't know, maybe released it with the G2 music label stuff. Same thing with the current one that they released, which was your everybody wants to call them the Cheeto Jazz. It would have been neat to see that thing actually be released in the other coloration that they had come up with for music label. If I can find a picture of him, I'm sure there is one, because I have a lot of G2 stuff. Sure, somebody has put it up, or I did. One of us did. Some of us do. See, I haven't noticed. My Generation 2 page has a lot of cool stuff on it. Yeah, here it is. This would have been nice to see done as music label as well. The G2 music label Jazz kind of needs some love as well. They really haven't done anything with him since the what everybody calls the Generations line, Generation Chug, whatever the heck they wanted to call it back then. We haven't seen that music label even attacked since then. It would have been nice to see that happen to this. I know some people are like, oh, we just get the white one that they released and, you know, throw that on there. Honestly, why not just do it officially? It's not hard to do that. It really isn't. It would have been another way for them to get this mold back out again. You never know. Might see one here in the future. That would be an interesting thing. I honestly think they could easily do that with a lot of this stuff. And we're going to sit here and talk about Seekers for a second here. As for Seekers, I myself took the Generation 2, or not Generation 2, but the newest Seeker mold, and I made a Generation 2 version for a friend of mine. I made a G2 Starscream. Why this has not happened as a official, I have not a clue. I really wish they would get off their duffs and actually do that. I mean, you guys are going to milk the Seeker mold. Why not do the G2 Starscream? It's not a hard thing to do. I mean, honestly, I don't get it. I have not understood this, and it's something I really think is strange considering the last version of Starscream we got, that was G2, wasn't even the previous one before this, but it was a version before that. Because they had two other different Seeker molds between them before we got a G2 Starscream. Why they did Ramjet, not this one, I ain't got a clue. It would have been nice to see that. I really think we need more Seekers done for G2. There's a lot of them that hadn't even gotten touched yet. Honestly, the Sky Scorchers never got messed with. One thing I do want to get into is, let's see here, 1 second. Has a bumpy my mic, sorry guys. Got Rapido here, right? Rapido got Generations Plasticon exclusive version, right? Where are the rest of our accelerators? Like, they want to continue to keep cranking out the same kind of molds. Okay, well, this mold hasn't been, or this particular toy hasn't been touched since then. And it's the same thing, actually, for Electro, which I find really strange, considering they've done pickup trucks recently. Why not? To quote, Mr. Mgo, why not? I don't understand why this has not happened as well. I don't understand why they're not trying to do the laser rods, why they're not trying to do Sky Scorchers, why they're not trying to do accelerators. Those are ones that, if you don't own the original molds, you're probably not going to have the toy, or the only little things we see are these two. I haven't seen anything for any Sky Scorchers love at all, which is weird, because considering Terra Drive is an easy repaint of pretty much any jet you really want to do at this point, considering not a lot of people know the intruder molds and such. But it would have been really interesting to see that. But I do want to let everybody know that the bridge gap between Generation 2 you look at what's called 1.5, and 1.5 would be your Thunderclash, right? Which everybody says, oh, well, he's not considered Generation 2, he's only considered Generation 1, which is actually incorrect, because Thunderclash actually had two different variant packages. Because if you look at the packaging, the packagings for some of these guys actually had Generation 1 or Generation 2 emblems on the parts themselves. This has a G1 logo, but the packagings themselves, I remember them seeing like the G2 logo being put on the packaging itself. So this has the G1 logo. But a lot of these did end up with a G2 logo as well. They mixed them up back then because they had lost rights to the G1 logo. I'm trying to find proof of the packaging, which I remember seeing. It's not a video. Maybe, or might be remembering it wrong, but I'm pretty sure I did see it with the G2 logo at one time. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get across here is everybody wants to be kind of purists about what's G1 and what's G2. And when it comes to Generation 2 actually has a lot of toys that literally got carried over from G1. You have, well, I don't know, G2 Optimus Prime, right? Everybody remembers, okay, G2 Optimus Prime Laser Rod, right? Well, if you look at the original toy itself, literally only had two things added to it. Two blaster guns and a sound box. The rest of this is actually all G1, except for the trailer was literally molded black. That's the only difference. So, in a way, you can say, well, Generation 2 Optimus Prime is almost 1.5, or whatever you guys want to call it. Because if you actually look at the emblems on G2 Prime, they're all the original Autobot emblem. They're not the G2 emblem. That actually didn't get changed until they decided to do the G2 version. Well, Laser Rod, I should say. And Laser Rod Prime actually has it on the back of his trailer. And the funny thing is a lot of people want to get really purist about it, and I'm like, well, you can say that about Jazz. You can say that about Sideswipe. Those were all G1 molds, right? Were used for G2. Generation 2 was one of those bridge gaps, like I say. I consider 1.5, which everybody calls 1.5 with Thunder Crash and all them. I even consider the Predator jets as Generation 2 because that's when all the wild, crazy colors started coming in. Yeah, it was toward the end of the 80s into the 90s, but these toys got released in Japan with G2 emblems on them. Like, let's see. Let's see here. See if I can find pictures of that. Because everybody wants to call it like 1.5 Euro G2. Trying to see if I can find a photo. Because you know, Google is so great now. Not really. That's a story for some other time. I'm not mistaken, I remember actually seeing Japanese versions of these that actually had the G2 logo on them. It probably was mainly the Cyberjets and such that I'm thinking of. But 1.5 is very important to G2, and so is G2 to Machine Wars. I personally consider Generation 2 and Machine Wars kind of a meld together thing. I consider them the same thing. Because actually, if you look at G2's Machine Wars Skywarp, if you look on his wing, Generation 2 logo right there. Right on the wing of this was, new in package, Generation 2 logo right there. And that's where I say, well, Machine Wars was part of Generation 2. I know there was no comics, there were no cartoons, there was no real lore for these guys at all. Like, there was a little bit of a bio, but that's about all you really had for any of these guys. I find it really strange that these are usually argued to not actually be G2, but if you notice, there's Generation 2 logos all over their packaging. Every one of them have it. If you look at that, and there's Skywarps. That's why I keep telling everybody it is Generation 2. Let's see here. Let's look for Mirage. Oh, look at that. Generation 2 logo. That's why I keep saying G2 is Machine Wars. And a lot of people want to argue about it, and it's something that I'm not going to argue about because a lot of people want to. And I personally, like I said, consider 1.5 part of Generation 2 because it just fits. It literally fits because there are a lot of the toys that came out in G2 packaging. It was mainly in the Euro market for, let's see here. What was it? Yeah, Skyquake. Oops. I can't type today, guys. Alright, G2 Skyquake. See? Literally, you bring up G2 Skyquake, look what comes up. Everybody acknowledges that he's G2. And the other thing that really bridges this gap between Generation 2 or 1.5 and going all the way to Machine Wars, these two molds literally came out of the Euro market. This in here is Stalker, this is your Skyquake. Well, this gets repainted as Starscream. This gets repainted as Soundwave in Machine Wars. They don't have the light piping anymore. This one kinda does. But the fact is, they stem from Generation 2. That's why one big thing that I like to tell people about is like, yeah, if you look at these things, look at the way the logo's slanted. That was Generation 2. G2 did the slanting logo, not Gen 1. And I know they call it 1.5. I don't really consider it 1.5 because I consider it G2. It's just because of the way the art box style is. Everything on it is, you know, predating G1, or not predating G2, but it also goes into, you know, Generation 1, just right at the tail end. I mean, these really didn't make any sense because these guys didn't really have any lore either, which is strange. And I just wanted to kind of clarify that a little bit because ones I remember seeing that had the packaging was some of the G2 stuff that they had for 1.5. I mean, let's see here. See if I can find the Japanese packaging for some of these guys. Packaging. Why am I not finding the packaging for Skyquake? Everything is modern. Let's see, does he have another picture of the packaging from the back? And this was a very G2 thing to do too here. These really weird stats on the back. Not to mention the coloring. Like I said, 89 was a really strange year. But as far as I'm concerned, it is very G2. I mean, even the way the instruction manuals are. This was very a Generation 2 way of doing things. That's like I said. I know these predate G2, but then look at this, 92. G2 was officially released in 93, but you gotta remember a lot of this stuff was being produced in 92 and even in 91. So a lot of this kind of bleeds over, and that's just the big thing I like to let people know about. I don't really want to cause an argument or anything over it. It's just one of those things that I really get into. I'm very passionate about how these were part of Generation 2. And the funny thing is they actually get picture art with a lot of G1, and then they turn it back around and get picture art with G2 stuff. And some people, let's see here. Let's look up Iron Fist. Packaging. Let's see, if we look at Generation 2 Iron Fist, he has a G2 emblem. Same artwork. Look at the way the artwork's done, the way the logo's done, the way the stats are done. That's what I'm saying. They are all G2. They are literally Generation 2. Because here in the United States, Generation 2 came out, like I said, in '93. We had a huge break for maybe about 3 years or so, it felt like, when they stopped doing, Transformers over here all together with Action Masters. States never seen any of this stuff. So this to me was like a test market for Generation 2 is what this was. Hence why they decided to move all the Generation 2 stuff over to the States. Here we only got 12 issues of the original Generation 2 comic, but over in Europe they only got 5 issues. And these 5 issues included 2 that were not printed in the United States, but they were drawn by a different company called Grand Dreams. And they also did an annual. If you go back in my archives, I actually have a review of that annual. And that kind of shows you the way the artwork was. Artwork looked a lot like this craziness. Like, it did. Like, it had this kind of style. And kind of shows where everything kind of had that melding. Like, I've always said that Generation 2 is probably the most important line out of all the Transformers, because it introduced light piping, it introduced ball joints, and articulation. It also introduced the integration of weapons into the robot modes. So it really had a whole lot to do with how things were being built and designed, and how it really kind of carried the torch. If it wasn't for Generation 2, Beast Wars probably would have never happened. I tell everybody that because a lot of light piping came into Beast Wars, a lot of ball joints and articulation, and the integration of weapons into some of their alt modes. That all stemmed from Generation 2. That's where the test bed came from. So a lot of people don't understand exactly how important it was. And if you look at the way some of the weaponry and such was integrated even into what's called the 1.5, or I like to call pre-G2, it's the same thing. Like Iron Fist here, the weapon sits on the top. The weapon becomes a launch platform for him to be able to use by itself. It's an integration of a weapon. And a lot of the other toys before that really didn't have that. There were a few, very, very, very few, but there were some. And the fact is, this toy itself is a Generation 2 toy. Although some people don't want to admit it, this guy came out during the same time Thunderclash did. And if you notice on the box art, if I can get the box art here to come up, a bigger picture here. You notice we have accelerators on here. We've got good old Pyro, aka Spark, here in the back. Those guys were on 2 different kinds of packaging too. They had one that had a G1 logo, and then later on it had a G2 logo. So there was a crossover, a huge crossover. And just the styling of the packagings themselves is very Generation 2. So, like I said, the meld happened there. That's where I think the whole sandwich kind of just come together. I personally am a huge fan of these. I really think if any toys need a remake nowadays, I did not mean to click on your video, sir. I would have to say it was probably the light formers. Light formers haven't had really a whole lot of love. The last light former we got was Iron Fist out of the Swerve mold. And this was your War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron toys. And it's been a very long time since we've gotten anything like this. And if these guys really want to start dipping into like stuff that we don't usually get, this is where it sits. Fistatron, Iron Fist, whichever one you want to call him. This guy needs some love too. And so does Calcar, Fear Swoop, and I can't remember the name of the other guy. I can see him in my brain, but I can't remember him. Anyway, you guys know what I'm getting at. These guys need a lot of love. They don't get half the love they get. I'm just trying to see if I can find a picture of them. Oh. Deathwing. The Harrier jet. Which, honestly, is a very hard one to get hold of because he has gold plastic. And he suffers from gold plastic syndrome, and sometimes he suffers from blue plastic syndrome. He's almost got a double whammy. Kind of like good old Slingshot. Or, well, yeah, I'd say Slingshot more than Electro, because Electro's got gold plastic, but he also has silver plastic. The silver plastic doesn't degrade. But Deathwing, the only thing that will really survive on him will be the translucent parts, which sometimes is questionable with that. But I find it funny when Hasbro wants to keep doing re-releases of toys, but yet they don't want to do any of these that could easily get thrown into your Generation 2 stuff. But anyway, I've been rambling long enough. I am going to probably go and have some dinner, but I wanted to kind of fill you guys in on a little bit of stuff that's been going on. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I have done my first scratch build, and I plan on doing a review of this. I made my own Grandis. I used to actually own a real toy, and I'm going to get around and do a review of him here in the future. Anyhow, sorry about the very beginning, guys, with the whole muted stuff. I'm going to probably go through and edit that part out, so that way that isn't sitting on YouTube, so that way everybody can see that. But anyway, this has been Plasticon. This has been yet another crazy deep dive into an interesting world that I am into. And that's it for now. Bye.